everything in journalism has been changing for some time, but just occasionally you need an event which comes along and really provides the prism through which to see that. And Wikileaks, to some extent, was that event, because it demonstrated how information is going to change hands. It has completely changed. The volume of that information has completely changed. The nature of privacy and disclosure of sources and the ease with which sources are found now, as opposed to maybe sort of 30 or 40 years ago, it prompted me to wonder how long Deep Throat would have stayed Deep Throat in the much more technological and traceable society. It illustrated that. It did also illustrate that I think that the print media provides extremely strong signal in among a lot of noise. But it's also interesting to think that the traditional media by itself couldn't have actually done this story either. That you needed the technical knowledge and expertise of people who were much more literate in how to distribute and serve these kinds of files from a much wider network. It also illustrated the things that we have to worry about in journalism in the future, which again are things like the electronic protection of sources. It's also the case that many of us thought that we had a free internet, and it was a public sphere which was going to be, if you like, the public commons for the future. And as we saw through the disabling of various services, that actually the internet is commercial internet, it's commercial space. And most of the companies who are dominating that commercial space are not journalistic. They may help us with journalism sometimes, they may host aspects of journalism, but they are not journalistic, and their first duty is not to either disclose or protect the freedom of expression or information. And I think that that leaves us with a really interesting set of problems to try and pick over. And I'd also say that the title is Who Won the Information War. It's a bit like the War on Terror. A, I wasn't quite sure that we had a war in the first place, and B, it's not at all clear that it's over or that it's won. I think that this is just the beginning of a whole new negotiation which works on a legal, a journalistic and a technological basis, which I think that we will really sort of be, as I say, picking over for years to come. And if you want proof of that, my colleague Michael Shockson's in the audience tonight. We're running a seminar on Wikileaks as a course here in the fall for our students, because we think it really, you can break off so many parts of it and use it to illustrate how journalism is changing and will change.
Well, I hope our discussion tonight will contribute to that coursework. TJ.
As a Bostonian visiting New York, it's wonderful to have Red Sox here on stage. Mark, I'd be careful as you head to the airport. You know, somebody's bound to be a Yankee fan in the check. PJ. Look, I will just briefly say we touched on a lot of issues here, and perhaps some of what needs to be said is what this is not about. I don't think that this is about an information war. You know, when standing at the State Department podium for 2 years, frequently I would be criticizing and cautioning other countries that had intimidated journalists, had jailed journalists, or in some cases had killed journalists. Andre knows better than anybody else, you know, the difficult and dangerous work of journalists in Russia. And I don't think this is about secrecy as, could the government have too many secrets? Sure, they have too many secrets. Yeah, but frequently what's classified is less about the information contained in the document, but the sources and sensitivities of those sources in those documents. And in one of my conversations as the State Department negotiator with occasionally The Guardian, but primarily the New York Times, where the Times very responsibly would say, we're going to report on a particular issue, we're going to put on the website certain documents of yours. If you have any concerns, let us know. And one document that we did highlight for the New York Times involved a cable reporting on developments in Russia, and among the sources of that perspective were in fact journalists in Russia who chose to sit down with our diplomats and provide their perspective on what was happening within the Russian government. And that gets to my primary point, which is in pushing out 251,000 documents without regard, without regard to the risks inherent in that. Mr. Assange and Wikileaks were in fact putting in danger the very activists, journalists, civil society activists, human rights lawyers that he thought that they were empowering. While at the State Department, we did in fact try to reach out to many of these sources and say, look, this information is going to come out. You are in some risk. In a small number of cases, in fact, we helped facilitate the movement of people from an autocratic country to a country where they might be safer. And so, real damage has been done here. Now, we've undergone leaks before. There's an issue here of transparency. I would argue that the United States is among the most transparent countries in the world. We can't keep a secret to save our lives. But in saying that, there have to be secrets. The government has proprietary information, just like a Coca-Cola that has a secret formula, just like a Google that has a secret algorithm. If you remove the veil of secrecy and confidentiality that's inherent in our work, we will not have that same competitive advantage that works to the benefit of our people and other countries. Last quick point is, this is not about whistleblowing. Whistleblowing is about one person, one issue, with the technical knowledge to say what is happening here is wrong and exposing it in order to correct that wrong. In pushing out 251,000 documents, what Julian Assange or perhaps others are saying is that the United States foreign policy is wrong in every country in the world, because the 251,000 documents in fact touch on every relationship the United States has with another country around the world. I just don't think that factually there's a basis for calling this whistleblowing.
One question that I'll come to you first that confuses me, and it's quite a simple one. If the State Department and the US government was so mindful of the safety and the confidentiality of its many sources talking to its diplomats around the world, why were their remarks circulated to 3 million people?
Well, the documents, after 9/11, remember we're not that far from ground zero here. The critique after 9/11 is that information was siloed in different agencies or different pockets of the government and not available for cross-reference and connecting the dots, to use that expression. And so in the aftermath of 9/11, there was an impetus to share information with relevant agencies in order to make sure that somebody in this corner of the government had access to information in that corner of the government. And so for the State Department, it set up something called the NCD, the Net-Centric Database. So information was put in there, a cloud if you will, and then it was available on certain classified networks for those who had the appropriate access.
Yeah, but human nature being what it is, if you circulate one email to 2 people, chances are someone's going to forward it to the wrong person or get it out or be indiscreet. If you circulate information to 3 million people, how on earth could you be so mindful of the secrecy? You surely need to have silos that are far tighter than they were. Well,